Hello everyone, welcome to another Reaper blog tutorial. Today I'm going to be sharing some of the impulse responses that I've created. These are all made with pink noise and I have a tutorial on how to make them. I have a link to that video in the info card and in the description below. But when I made that video, I was hoping that people would take that idea, create a bunch of impulse responses, and share them with the community. That didn't happen, so I'm going to take another step forward and give you 48 impulse responses that you can have for free that you can use with Reaper and its built-in convolution reverb. This is the original session where I made the impulse responses. So I have TDR Nova and it's doing a dynamic EQ on the low end, and the low pass filter comes down with each one. I'll just play those so you can see what this is doing and how this sounds. So automated EQ, and there is just a short fade on each of these sounds. So there's 3 different fade shapes. So there's the fast end shape, there is the linear shape, and the fast start shape. And these shapes apply to all of the effects automation later on in the project. The next batch of samples uses Isotope's vocal doubler, just to kind of add some separation, make this wider. So these sound like this. So just a little bit wider. The next one is redelay. And I'm delaying one channel by 18 milliseconds. So the right side is going to be delayed by 18 milliseconds. But instead of there just being nothing there, I decided to blend in the dry signal 12 dB down, so that the right side is just silent for 18 milliseconds. So just a little bit wider, more stereo width. And then the next one is with pitch after the EQ. And so I'm automating the formant shift. And I'm using the same curve shape for that, going from plus 12 down to 0 on the formant shift. It's a fairly subtle effect, but it sounds different than all the others. So then there's the different lengths. So I've got 125 milliseconds here, I've got 250 milliseconds, 500, and then 1000 or 1 second. So after I exported these files, I put them in another session and normalized them to -6, and then glued them so that all the files are clean, like the exact same volume, more predictable to use. So let's go over to my demo session. And in here, I have all of those normalized files, and we can hear what each of them sounds like. So we would never actually listen to reverb on its own. It's usually used in parallel, processing a sound as a filter. So these sound a little bit weird, but you can hear the differences between those 4 variations and the different lengths and all that. So now I have a little bit of a demo. I have some sort of synth samples. Sort of a deadmau5 style, I guess. And I have some drums here. And there's sort of a verb on that snare already, I guess. Just to make sure that it's not confusing, I'm just going to tighten those up. Okay, so that's my demo stuff. Then I have reverb. Reaper's built-in convolution reverb with different impulses loaded in. And it's important to know that when you're using these in here, you'll want to have this apply 18 dB gain on there. You could also use the normalize to -18 option, but that is a little bit louder. And if we leave it normal, it's going to be like -7. So, just keep that in mind. You do need to apply some gain change or there's going to be extremely loud. That's just the nature of how this stuff works. You want to have the wet signal at 0 or less, and the dry all the way down. These are stereo files, so if you want to run these in mono, you can set the width to 0. You can reverse the stereo image by setting the width to -1. If you want to use these on guitars or something like that in real time, you want to make sure that the 0 latency option is on. That is going to increase the CPU load, so keep that in mind. And you can manage the CPU load by changing the max FFT size. Something like 512 should be a little bit more manageable if you're running into trouble. And for best results, when you want to render it, you could turn off 0 latency, put the max FFT size up to the top, and you'll have the best sound. So right now I have the IRX 500, that's 500 milliseconds, 03, that is clean delay widener, B, and that is a linear fade shape. And so that's on the synths, and on the drums I have IRX 250, 250 milliseconds, 01, that is no effects, and A is the fast end shape. That's going to have the most bass. You can see that there's a lot of energy in the low end in the spectrogram. So we're going to get a bass boost on the kick drum. So let's just listen to that now. So it sounds like a space, not like a real space. It's a little bit too simple, I think, but again, this is a free thing. It was easy to make. It's easy for me to share it with you guys. Since Reaper doesn't come with great reverbs, it doesn't come with an impulse response library, this is something that you can use for free. You can get usable results from it. Let's just focus on the drums. Since these are drums, we probably want a tighter reverb sound, so we want probably the C shape. Same settings, but we're changing the fade shape to C. Let's hear this. That's a little bit too tight. Let's try the 500 millisecond with the 1C. There it is. And let's try it with the linear shape. And that's more of a sort of traditional hall reverb sort of shape. It doesn't decay on really long. That's only half a second, but I think it adds in a nice sense of space. And so let's experiment with the different sort of width options, the different effects. So we've got 2B, which is the isotope doubler. So there's a bit of movement throughout that. And the clean delay is just going to be wider than that one. For comparison, here's without the effect. And then finally, the formant shift. Where it sort of has a higher pitched sound at the beginning, and then it drops down, not below normal, but down to normal. It's an interesting effect, and it's something that you can't really get through EQ or other things. It's not a pitch shift, but it's a formant shift. A formant shift is often used for changing a male voice to a female, that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm liking the 500 millisecond with the, I think I go with the 3B as my favorite for these drums. And we can always adjust the volume. And if there's too much of the hi-hat in there, we can turn down the hi-hat send. That sounds pretty good. And let's work on those synths. So I'll just mute the drums. That ended up with the same setting. So that's 500 milliseconds with the clean delay widener and the B shape. Let's try out these longer ones. So I'm going to use the B shape again with no effects. One second isn't like an incredibly long decay time for reverb, But you can see that even with this, it's a little bit easy. It can be easy for that to become quite cluttered. And generally, that means that you need some EQ either before or after the reverb to manage the low frequencies. So let's just put in an EQ after the reverb and do something like this. And I'll bypass it. And let's try that before the reverb. And I'll solo the reverb. And I'll put that EQ after. It's kind of a subtle difference. If we EQ before the reverb, then it's going to kind of cut all the low frequencies, so it's not going to convolve those frequencies, and we're going to get less of it out. It can be a cleaner sound. But in this case, it's kind of a subtle difference. So again, let's experiment with the different effects. We'll go to the same fade shape, but we'll use the doubler. I think I like this one the most. So 1 second with the clean delay widener and the fast start shape. And for that loop, that works pretty well. And if you have a different convolution reverb, like let's say Fog Convolver, it's the same process to bring those in. You can just go to one of the files, let's say this one, drop that in. And Fog Convolver does have an auto gain function that's in the settings window, so impulse auto gain. And so the only thing you need to do is make sure that the dry signal is all the way down, and you can maybe put in a little bit of a high pass just to manage the low end. And which track was that? And I'll bypass the reverb. So yeah, so these will work in any convolution reverb where you can load in WAV files. So I'm going to have a link to where you can download these, and again, they're free. Hopefully you guys can take this idea and run with it, make some variations, and share a link in the comments. So that's where I'm going to leave it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoy these impulse responses. Hope you can find them useful in your productions. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Support the Reaper blog through Patreon. And visit reaperblog.net for a lot more tutorials.